everybody, welcome to this video on how to connect your FizzWizz to a bright tank and set it up and start carbonating. So we're going to take a quick look at the connections and see how quickly it is to connect it up. 3 different carbonation modes that you can set, and then we're actually going to set it up, work out the flow rate that we have to flow the carbonation stone at and start carbonating before we summarise how to set FizzWizz up for head transfer mode. So we're going to say that we don't have a spare thermal valve because it's being used by the glycol system, or the thermal valve that we have is not suitable for doing the carbonation process. But you have your own carbonation stones. So we have an alternative fittings kit, and that comprises of the isolation valve and the industrial push-to-connect-on and the stone modification kit for modifying the stones, and also this thermal valve adapter kit. So we're going to use the thermal valve adapter kit to modify the sample board. Okay, so let's just go back to the CIP arm. So the CIP arm, once we've installed the isolation valve with industrial push to connect, we're going to put the arm separator on. And the arm separator is important because this little tube here is going to catch the condensation and any beer overflow, and it's going to appear in this tube, and then the user can just use the Swiffer valve and vent it onto the floor. And we use these nice Dixon click to connects, and these are nice because they click on, and we know they've made a good seal, and they're guaranteed to be good for low pressure seals. So the stone modification kit, that has to go onto a carbonation stone. Now all our welds are epoxy welds, and ideally that's what you would use here. But essentially what we have to do is modify the carbonation stone like that. Obviously there's going to be plumber's tape or some sort of epoxy weld to make sure that's a good gas type field. And these stone modification kits have to be installed upright because of this zero crack pressure check valve. If we install them this way, then we get fluid gas separation, and your beverage goes that way and the gas goes this way, and you end up with beer coming back in the line. So they must be installed upright. To get a thermal valve into this tank, then we are simply going to take the sample port off of the tank and install our stone modification kit. And then the sample port would go on the side. Alright, so let's start with connections. So with our connection kits, we use these lovely Dixon Sanitary connects, and we supply with all the hoses required to connect it up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to seek out the arm separator, and this arm separator is super important because we don't want any condensation or liquid that has got into the CIP arm to get into the FizzWizz, and that's what this is for. And so before we connect it up, we should just quickly open it up, and if there's any fluid in the arm, that will fall onto the floor, and then we can connect the arm separator up. Then we're going to connect the arm separator up to the arm fitting on FizzWizz, and It's easy to identify. Just got a picture of the arm separator on it. So we have the arm hose. So the next connection is the stone hose. The stone hose consists of one of these Dixon clip to connects, and also it's got a mechanical check valve, and so that means that the stone hose actually has two check valves in it, because you also have the zero crack pressure check valve in the stone modification kit, and that simply clips onto the top of the carb stone, and obviously there's a sign there on FizzWizz that says carb stone, and this is a 5/16 diameter hose that just pushes into this pneumatic push to connect. So we need to find a CO2 supply, and that's down here, and the regulator that's feeding this CO2 supply needs to be set to somewhere between 30 and 40 pounds per square inch. Alright, and so the other thing that we need is a temperature sensor right here. And previous videos you would have seen that there's loads of ways to get a temperature out of a bright tank. In this particular bright tank they're using one of our Stone combos. The temperature sensor slides in the bottom of the Stone combo. Alright, so that's all the settings, that's all the hoses. It's totally possible to like just shorten these hoses if they're too long. But we're not going to do that in this demonstration. Okay, so now the FizzWizz, we turn the FizzWizz on, and the first question you get asked is, do you want to start a new batch, yes or no? So if you have the cloud services activated, you would say yes. The next question you get asked is your start temperature. So this is the start threshold temperature that the FizzWizz will start carbonating at. So for beers that get cold crashed before they're transferred, the temperature when the product hits the tank is usually under 3.5 degrees Celsius anyway. But if you are like a salsa maker or a kombucha maker, then those products don't get chilled until they get into the bright tank. So if your tank is sitting at 10 degrees, you might want to raise the start temperature so that you can start maybe a 2-stroke cycle or something like that. But in this stage, we don't need to adjust this, we're just going to leave it at 3.5 degrees. This little flashing backwards and forwards that the lights do indicate that the FizzWizz has spoken to the cloud and has got a confirmation back, and it's started a new batch for recording the data for quality control and historical requirements. So the next thing we're going to do is select carbonation mode, and then we're going to decide how fizzy we want our beverage. So I happen to know that the client wants this tank carbonated to 2.7 volumes, so I'm not going to change this. And the next thing you're going to get asked is the carbonation type. So the standard carbonation type used for most products is normal, and what normal means is that the bright tank starts at 0 degrees, 0 psi. So there's no pressure on this tank at the moment, just like the smallest amount of head pressure, but practically 0 psi. And what will happen is that the FizzWizz will measure the temperature of the tank and then calculate what the equilibrium pressure is based on the 2.7 volumes. So that's the normal carbonation time. and that is what we're going to do with this tank. There are two other options, and we'll go into more detail about that in another video, but there is a pre-scrub option and the ability to remove oxygen from your beverage, and there is also what's called the top-up function, and that is for people who use spunding or who are doing inline carbonation into a bright tank and they need to just slightly adjust the carbonation after every time. But this client's doing good old normal, so I'm going to hit OK to that, and it's now going to check a bunch of stuff like the input pressure and the temperature, and now it's going to ask me, do I want to set a carbonation stone flow rate? And I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to press enter. So now what will happen is the FizzWizz will turn the gas on for about a minute, and at this time you can figure out how much gas we want to get flowing into the FizzWizz. So if I turn this knob up, you'll see this blue goes up, but obviously that's going to drop down because I don't have the carbonation stone open. So I'm going to open up the carbonation stone, and I happen to know that we need to flow this carbonation stone in this tank at around 7 cubic feet per hour. But I'm going to show you how to actually calculate your carbonation stone flow rate using our app. That's great. We now know how to flow this carbonation stone to make sure that it doesn't go hydrophobic by using the brewer's app, and I can set this carbonation stone to this tank for the appropriate level. Now this number here is going to count down all the way to 0, or I can bypass it by hitting the enter button, and now it will start the carbonation process, and we can now leave this to carbonate. So what we're going to imagine now is that we've come in the morning and this product is now nicely carbonated and we want to get ready for packaging. Okay? So the first thing we do is we hold the blue button in until the product comes out of carbonation mode. And we'll say no to new batch, and we're happy with the start temperature. And now, instead of selecting carbonation mode, we'll go to head pressure mode. And now this will give us the option now to select what the head pressure on the tank is going to be kept at. And we have two ways of measuring the pressure in the tank for packaging. So the kind of default way, the standard way, is to use this same setup and use the pressure transducer that is connected to the arm and turning in the FizzWizz to hold the head pressure at the required pressure as called for by the canning line, which is usually around 15 psi. So that works fine with like these smaller tanks. So any tank that's like kind of under 30 barrels, that works extremely well. And essentially, one of the things to think about is the height of the beer and the weight of the beer that is actually pushing down, coming out of the bottom of the bright tank. So if we start to get tall tanks, then we can start to gather quite a lot of hydrostatic pressure at the bottom of the tank. So what happens is if you're only monitoring the head pressure, then as the weight of the beer comes off the bottom of the tank, the head pressure might stay at 15 psi, but the bottom tank pressure might have started at 17 and then dropped down to 15, okay? So what you would typically do is if you were running a canning line at that point, or a bottling line, you just open the throttle up a little bit as you go, or you could come along with FizzWizz, and on the fly, you can increase the pressure, as you go to keep that pressure nice and stable. Or we can use our foot transducer. So this is our foot transducer. What happens is this is installed on a T-section right at the bottom of the tank here. And the FizzWizz has an auto-detect system. So what happens is that you would simply take the temperature sensor out and plug in the foot pressure transducer, and you would install that at the bottom of the tank. And now the FizzWizz will maintain the pressure at the bottom of the tank, and that way you're always feeding the absolute same pressure to your bright tank all the way through the packaging, all the way through the pack.